Alright guys, this is episode 2 of Top 10 Guys. We're coming at you live. And tonight's episode is going to be top 10 albums of all time. We got together Wednesday night and we discussed a lot of different albums that we thought should be in consideration. And it was a lot of competitive banter between all of us about which ones we thought, because a lot of personal emotion came into that. But we're going to come at you with our top 10, what we came up with, and see what y'all think about it.
So, with that, number 10, Dr. Dre, The Chronic. And this was one that didn't make the list at first, and we had to go through and kind of re-pick, because we had so many albums that we picked at first. And Dr. Dre, The Chronic ended up at number 10. Sold 6 million copies, around 6 million copies. Released in 1992 by Death Row, Dr. Dre's label. Hit number 1 on the R&B hip-hop Billboard, number 3 on the Billboard 200, 3 times platinum. It was also the intro of Snoop Dogg on an album, kind of launched his career with that. And to me, the biggest, well,
absolutely.
And then the biggest single on there was Nothing But a G Thing.
And I think we weren't supposed to bring personal emotion into it, but for me personally, like when we would go cruising and everything, I mean, that was the album that you had out. If you had bass in your car, that was the album that you had to have. So, I'm sure Andy, what's your thoughts?
To me, like, this isn't going just on record sales, because actually, as I've looked up, record sales are all over the place, no matter what site you're looking at. This one, so this is not based on record sales, because that's easy to do. Plus, and we didn't mention that we took out all greatest hits albums and all soundtracks, because we wanted artists. And again, I think that part of it with some of these albums are the influence that these albums had. Mm-hmm. And this one, I felt like was such a link from like some of the gangster rap that people, like, it was untouchable. It was like taboo. You couldn't listen to it. And even though it still, had the, little parent, adversary, don't listen to it label, that it linked kind of like East Coast, West Coast. It linked gangster rap that didn't have to be all hard. It could be smooth. It could be mainstream. It could bleep out a couple songs, have some videos. NWA never had a video like that was ever played, at any significance. This dominated, videos and the charts at the same time. Brought Snoop in. It had so much impact on just our culture and bringing it to where rap is now. This was such a gap. Like I said, so many different ways that this album belongs there.
And also Warren G and Nate Dogg on that album, and should produce it.
Great. So number 9 on our list is Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. For me, this is a great album. I think basically, if you think about the cassette era, a lot of people our age definitely had that cassette in their car, or their parents, even my parents. I think my dad had this cassette. So, if
cassette was a rectangular piece of plastic.
Right. For those of you that don't know what that is, just the album art for we didn't talk about album covers at all, but the album art,
it's controversial.
Was definitely way above. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's got like skulls on it and everything, but it was very
the inner sleeve a little bit more.
Well, I was gonna say the inner sleeve is what they wanted for the cover,
right?
And the record company said can't do that,
like
don't sell. So they put it inside and then put the cross with the images of the band on there.
Give us some stats, Chris.
Released in '87, sold about 21 million copies, 5 singles, 5 times platinum. Sweet Child of Mine.
Well,
Welcome to the Jungle. Come on.
Well,
you want to talk about? I know this isn't about money, but when you talk about endorsements and royalties and stuff, how much money does that band still get from this song? Because from Welcome to the Jungle is played in just about every movie. You can't watch a movie on Netflix without seeing it.
Every major league sports something has Welcome to the Jungle in it.
And this album, again, kind of a crossover where even though it came out as this hard rock band, growing up in that era, everybody knew those songs. It didn't matter if you liked heavy metal or not. You had this album. You knew the songs. Sweet Child of Mine might have been the, those power ballads were so big in the 70s and 80s. That might have been the pinnacle of, that was, because that song, Sweet Child of Mine, exactly, that was there. That was, everybody knew it. Everybody was singing it. Again, it didn't matter if you liked pop, you liked country, you knew this song. If you grew up if you were in high school this time, and even beyond, those songs are,
Everybody. And talk about the pop culture of MTV when those videos what they brought to MTV was just, you know, iconic to our generation.
And it was kind of kicking out the hairband era too, where it made it a little bit harder again for rock and roll
Right.
versus that poppy hairband stuff.
I agree. All right, number 8 on our list is going to be Def Leppard Hysteria. Again, I'm big on the album art, and that album, I mean, all these albums on our list, I can just imagine in my mind what the cover looked like. But this is one with the triangle and everything. It's just like, you know, to me, it's iconic. I'm sure Chris in a minute is going to get down to the number of hits and, you know, stats of the album. But again, going back to the cassette era, this was one that everybody had. What's the stats, Chris?
Released in '87, produced by Mutt Lange, ex-husband of Shania Twain. 7 singles, about 13 million copies sold. Multi-platinum in multiple countries. Number 5 in 5 different countries at the same time. And was the first album of Rick Allen after the accident. So,
One-armed drummer.
One-armed drummer, and that started.
Revolutionized. Well, I mean, I honestly probably would pick Guns N' Roses still better than this album. I know this had more hits, but you can't. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, where it is still. I felt like their style went a little bit more pop, and everybody sells out a little bit. I felt like that. Maybe a little bit of that in this, but you know what? They're millionaires right now, so they're
Nobody
happy.
sold out more than Bryan Adams, so I mean,
Isn't he number 2 on this list? I gave it away. I'm sorry. My bad.
All right, so number 7 on our list is going to be Nirvana, Nevermind. And again, like my theme the last couple albums have been the album cover, but I think everybody knows, you know, the naked baby on the front chasing the dollar bill. I mean, that was. He was drowning?
Didn't look like he was floating, so.
Well, baby's not a swim, Chris. I don't know if he was drowning. But anyways, naked baby chasing the dollar bill. It might have been a $100 bill, I'm not even sure, but there was a bill that the naked baby was chasing. But again, I think Nirvana was just iconic to our generation, that it just really came out there and gave us a different sound that, you know, we weren't used to hearing, and really revolutionized what the 90s grunge scene was going to be.
Released in '91, 4 singles. It defined the glam grunge period, I guess,
grunge, yeah.
right? Well, glam grunge. I mean, grunge was there, but.
It wasn't called. It was just grunge.
Well, I'm saying
the
glam
Seattle
grunge,
sound.
Glamour is like.
Well, Tom Petty gets a lot of credit for inventing grunge, but he was just a grungy dude. I mean, I don't think he invented anything. I think he was just kind of nasty to kind of fit in. But anyways,
Kurt Cobain and Dave Grohl together, which is incredible to me. Hit the charts in 22 countries, number 1 in the U.S. Certified diamond in the U.S., which a lot of these albums we talk about aren't. 5 times platinum, 3 countries, 7 times number 1, and then including New Zealand. So the reason why that's big is because the era of grunge started with them, pretty much, and carried over throughout the world, which to me is not a lot of these bands did. So when something like that did, and I say that not a lot of bands, obviously some of the other ones on here do, but for that time period and what that music was to carry across the world,
it was just new. It was a
yeah,
new
it's not
sound. It was
something
fresh,
people
and it was something nobody ever heard.
Well, and he goes back to who my number 1 was, but Jimmy from Seattle. I know I had to throw it in there, but yeah, Ryan Ware and Jimmy not on the list. So sorry, guys. But he died from Seattle, self-taught, left-handed guitarist. Nirvana, I mean, you know, Alice in Chains and a couple other bands were about the same time. I think the Pearl Jam album came out very, very close to that. But that's the one that brought the grunge movement, you know, just skyrocketed. And again, I think the 27, I heard Robert Johnson, might have been, I know Jimi Hendrix, I think he died at 27. There's a whole band, there's like a number 27 age at some significant, and what Kurt Cobain might have done, just like Jimi Hendrix and some other artists, had he not, I mean, self-inflicted, his wound.
Supposedly, allegedly.
Some arguments with that, but again, what he might have done might have been, you know, made, you know, some even bigger with his musical talent, and kept David Grohl there and everything. But amazing album. Again, when you take a whole movement of you know, a whole decade, and you start that, I mean, that album is significant.
Absolutely.
I agree. All right, so number 6 on our list is going to be Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. And I guess my theme of this whole, he's kind of our stats guy, and he kind of just backs it up with bringing everything together. But right now, I guess I'm going with album covers. And again, the album covers, the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Top 10 on album covers?
The Red Hot Chili Peppers logo.
I thought he went on stats, but I guess not.
I know. But that is definitely just right there. I mean, I can vision it in my head. I remember the first time I was actually at a wing restaurant of all places, and I saw that in the jukebox, and I was just, you young people don't know what a jukebox is, but I saw that in the jukebox, and I was just like, I'm going to play a song off of this just because of that. And I think that what Red Hot Chili Peppers brought over the period of time is back, you know, kind of like what we talked about with Nirvana, was just they brought a whole different new sound, revolutionized what 90s rock was about. And Chris, give us some stats.
About 9 million albums sold, released in 91. 5 singles on it, Give It Away and Under the Bridge to me, just, and then you got Flea. Flea in the band.
Well, I think the thing about with this album, that Red Hot Chili, this was probably their 5th, 6th album.
There's at least 4.
Yeah.
That came out, because even right after that, the What Hits album came out, and the only hit was on there from this album was Under the Bridge.
Right.
And because they weren't very mainstream, I remember even before that album, people mentioned, well, I had Chili Peppers, and I was just like, it was a little bit too punk for me. It was a little bit, I was like, you know, I heard that album, and that made me go back and listen to some of the other Red Hot, and I was like, you know what, they really were very good. And that album would not made me do that, and it changed their whole sound. The Under a Bridge kind of that mellow kind of punk sound, it carried them through the whole decade of the 90s after that. I mean,
and it had a song on the album called "Suck My Kiss." I mean, like, what else do you want? I mean,
so like I said, I mean that album did so much. I mean, I could see where I think it influenced us in the time period. Maybe not as shouldn't be as high for other reasons, for record sales, but influence and how
Pop
it hit
culture.
people, pop culture,
MTV.
the college crowd at that time. It was
Definitely
huge.
college crowd.
It
Concert
was
scene.
huge.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
what do y'all want to say? They brought in the mosh pit more or less? A little bit before that?
It was
I'm
before
sure
that.
people will argue that, but I think it
Let's see.
definitely
We got hype
had
right
an
there.
influence on it for sure.
Yeah.
And Flea.
Actually,
That's
And
one of the
Suck
best
My
players
Kiss.
ever.
so number 5 on our list is going to be ACDC Back in Black. This is one time I can say the album cover was not that iconic. They just said ACDC, lightning bolt, boom, we're good to go, black and white. So
Simple as that.
you guys can't get on me about that one, okay? Give us some stats, Chris.
Released in 1980, about 25 million records sold. The producer, any idea? You didn't look.
Well, if you didn't tell me earlier,
Rick Rubin?
Might lying again.
That was my line.
First album post Bon Scott death, and 4 singles that topped number 4 in the U.S. Didn't really produce as high as what you would think, but the album itself overall was an incredible album, especially as a rock album for that time. I mean, just.
And again, I think it's
freaking
one of those.
testosterone.
It's
just
one
in
of
your
those albums
face.
again that I think that even if you didn't listen to a lot of rock, sorry.
The rap?
Yeah, rap. You had this album, or you knew this album, or you knew songs from this album. This song, this was, and the fact that it came out the same year as Highway to Hell.
Mm-hmm.
They were ready to fold it. Believe it or not, ACDC was ready to. That's it. Bon Scott's dead. How can we do this? And actually, it was Malcolm Young. Remember hearing a conversation about Bon Scott telling about the singer he heard in this band Gordy. He's like, "Oh my God, this guy rocks. He's awesome." He contacted him, brought him in, and like 6 months later, they've got one of the best albums of all time. I mean, amazing.
So to be able to make that kind of transition,
I mean, that
is just.
But again, and just like the album cover, that was very simple. That's the thing about ACDC.
Yeah.
Just throughout their whole careers, they just simple. Everything about it was just simple. It was rock, right in your face, rock and roll. And I mean, the album cover actually fits them so perfect. It's just a Back in black album, white letters, ACDC, that iconic, their iconic logo that everyone knows. And I mean.
And I think what Andy said is so true. Bringing that Brian Johnson sound just, I mean, I wouldn't say it changed the band, but man, it just gave them more direction and just really focused them on how, you know, the other albums that came out after that. It was just, you know, Thunderstruck and some of those other ones, it just really, really set a tone for what the band was going to be going forward.
And I think one of the things that's amazing with that too is like, you know, you have other bands that losing a singer is one of the hardest things because you can find someone that play the drums that sounds similar, or you can find the guitars that can kind of, but the singer, the lead singer, and for it to be so seamless.
Yeah, that's your identity.
And they had some great hits. I mean, and then the hits they put out afterwards with Thunderstruck and, you know, Mean Streak, and I mean, just so, I mean, they for those about to rock, I mean, they still put out great hits that, again, it was seamless. It wasn't like this whole Van Halen, oh, who's better, you know, it was just like no one complained about it. It just kept on going and stronger than ever. So, I mean, just that
I think
momentum.
the subtitle of this album would be the introduction of Brian Johnson. I mean, it was just amazing. So number 4 on our list is going to be Eagles, Hotel California, and these guys fought me a little bit on this one. I had it much higher on my list, but
which is the only reason it's this high on this list.
Yeah.
okay, that's fair. That's why averages exist and why they work in our society. But number 2 all time, I'm not trying to take away from Chris's stats because he's our stat guy, but number 2, and depending on what list you look at, number 2 all time in album sales, and just I think it really identifies as Eagles. When you think Eagles, you think of this album. Give us some stats.
Released in '76, had 3 singles. The album hit number 1. It was the first album with Joe Walsh though as the guitarist,
I didn't know that.
and also had Don Henley and Glenn Frey in the band. Which I mean, it just forget
Forget
the album. When you put that band together, it's
Oh, it's a superstar band.
It's an all-star band.
My thing with it being on here, and probably the reason is that I even went back and listened to it. Which, by the way, I think, you know, do yourself a favor and some of these albums, go back and listen to some of these, and even some of these albums that didn't make this list. I am so thankful for doing this list because I listened to some albums cover to cover that I've never listened to because I just listened to the greatest hits of some of these, but not impressed with this album as a whole. Again, 3 hits, awesome songs. Eagles' greatest hits, both 1 and 2, great albums. This album as a whole didn't impress me, even after I went back and listened to it. Some great songs, but like I said, again, greatest hits are not on here, so that's why I kind of fought this album a little bit. You know, if we go by record sales, belongs here. We go by hits, really doesn't belong.
But you made it a point, and it's something we figured out, or at least I figured out, was there's tons of great songs. There's not tons of great albums, though.
Right.
And there are albums that have a lot of hits and that kind of. But overall, there's great artists and there's great songs. But great albums as a whole is hard to do.
And you know, hits is great, and record sales are great. But really, when you think about what makes a great album, and I think this was kind of all our criteria, is one that you could just put on and listen from front to beginning.
Yeah.
And maybe this one didn't have the hits like Andy said, or maybe this didn't have the singles like what you said, but to just, you know, be on a lake chilling or whatever and hit play and just kick back and drink some beverages, good album.
When I try to, like, that's what maybe you, for
When I
me,
try to,
that
I throw up in
was
my mouth.
exactly when I
Just
put it
didn't
on.
drink enough.
Sorry, I was driving. Didn't drink at all.
So before tonight, I was unaware that we were going to be wearing apparel from albums that we were endorsing, but I'm definitely doing that. Number 3 on our list is going to be Beastie Boys' License to Ill. To me, you want to talk about albums that you can just put on and listen to. I'll let these guys talk about what it did for our generation and for, you know, the new sound that they brought. But to me, I think you can make an argument for number 1. And I know the stats probably won't stack up to that, but just unbelievable album. I mean, the sound that they brought, and I think they had 1 album or maybe 2 before this one, but this was so fresh. I remember the first time I heard them, I was just like, wow, what is this? These white boys are out here doing this. And I was just like, wow, you know, and you know, some of the hits that didn't get, like Hold It Now, and some of the other songs that, you know, on that album, Girls, that didn't get Paul Revere. I mean, they didn't get the notoriety that Fight for Your Right to Party got, but still great songs.
Which probably wasn't one of the best albums on the album. Well, and I think the thing about Beastie Boys, like, this was probably one of the lowest selling albums. But again, for a generation, what it did, again, it's kind of jumping the rap, rock mix. You know, they were right in the mix of that heart of all that was going on with LL Cool J, Run DMC, all those that were helped bringing rap to the mainstream. They were right in the mix of that. They were, and they helped with a little bit MTV that helped them move them even forward. The sampling they did some clever sampling which they did throughout their career. That they were sampling a lot of Led Zeppelin on this album, which kind of brought in that. And I say one of the best concert experiences, which I enjoyed while I was there, but didn't really understand the magnitude of it until like looking back on it. When I went to see them in 1987, and I come on stage and they have an opening band, no idea who it is, and these guys in berets with these fake Uzis, which you listen to the album, you know exactly what the little radio spot from Public Enemy comes out, and crazy guy with the clock, and I'm going, what is my experience right now? And by the end, I'm going, this is freaking cool. And then Beastie Boys come out, play their whole set, rock the house, and then for their encore, Run DMC comes out. Because we're in New Haven, Connecticut, right by New York City. It was the last leg of their tour. They were best friends with them. So anyone who wants to discount the Beastie Boys credibility, they were right there. Right there in the mix with this. Right? Yeah. They were well respected. They weren't just some cheesy little band going They weren't Vanilla Ice or Snow or any of those other white rappers trying to They were legit.
There's anything wrong with white rappers.
No. But they were legit. They were right in the mix of that, and just that concert experience. That's one of the things I look back and going, wow, I really was there to witness that. But that's the kind of influence that band, and then turning rap into just the mainstream. Allowing bands, the NWA to Dr. Dre back to our album to where it is now.
It paved the way.
This really put it, put it years ahead. If this album hadn't come out, it would have been years behind.
I think you just said it was years ahead from what they did. The songs now, you can listen to them now and they still relate. From then till now they relate. And I think there's very few other bands you can say that with. And to have a white group of guys that do rap that can carry that through, I don't think it'll ever happen again.
And Andy kind of trumped you, so do you have stats for us?
No, you guys nailed it. 7 hits, hit the Billboard 200 #1, R&B and hip hop at #2. Record sales weren't that great. Produced by Rick Rubin, is one of the best.
And back to album covers, maybe not the best, but not bad, kind of iconic. It made a shirt, so come on. Okay, so number 2 on our list is going to be Beatles' Abbey Road, and this is one of the, a lot of our albums have been kind of in the album genre of the 75 to probably early 90s. This was a little bit before that, but honestly, I think these guys are going to have a little bit more to say about it. It wasn't as high on my list as what it was on theirs, but it really wasn't an album that I listened to too much growing up, but I understand the importance of what it did for them and kind of closed out their hits career. So give us some stats.
It's 69 release, only had one single, only sold 13 million copies, which I guess in the 60s was good.
Which I think by everything I saw, it was the second selling album, minus Greatest Hits for the Beatles. It was the second behind Sgt. Pepper's, and that's where we kind of had, Sgt. Pepper on a lot of lists are #1. To me, again, when we're talking albums, we kind of did mention this at the beginning. The album era really was mid 60s to mid 90s.
Correct.
And really, if there's a band, a group, artist, whatever, that really epitomized the album, like putting out songs together that flowed together, that had maybe a story, that the Beatles were it. We could make a top 10 just all Beatles. And we kind of wanted to go across genres and influence, and the Beatles obviously one of the most influential bands, that had huge impact. But Abbey Road just came to me. It was just one album that just flowed together, come together. My favorite Beatles song.
Mm-hmm.
Starts the album off with that. they let Ringo write a song. You write a song about Octopus's Garden. I mean, that's what happens when you let Ringo write a song. You know, he wants to, let me write one, and then you get that. But it's actually a good song. But I mean, and then they have that whole medley at the end. It's just a very cohesive album. One of their top-selling albums. You know, a lot of people probably say Sgt. Pepper belongs there instead. Personally, I just like Abbey Road.
And it may. I mean,
And it may.
I think this kind of goes down to our list, like when we did our baseball list. We knew that Cy Young deserved to be on the list. Why? Just because. And I think Beatles, just because they need to be on this. Which album? I don't know. Sgt. Pepper, this one? I don't know, but I think they deserve to be on our list.
Well, the first band to come over from England and you know, do what they did to, you know, appear on TV, have the most views on TV at the time.
And Beatlemania, I mean, it was a whole thing, you know?
Yeah. And then this album was also #1 in 9 countries in the 60s.
That's why we have him here, because he can throw stuff out like that and it just hits you.
But I mean, when you talk about, you're not talking about like now where you have the internet and you can just go out and throw something out on the internet and become #1.
It had
These
to
guys
be
did it in the
imported.
60s, yeah.
It had to be,
Had to carry through the news and you know, and it took weeks and months to do, but they did it.
And you don't hear about, you know, Def Leppard mania, or you know, you hear, you know, everybody knows what Beatlemania is. I mean,
Well,
we say so many times. I think we said iconic, you know, probably 20 times tonight. But you want to talk about iconic, the Beatles.
They were the iconic.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when John Lennon made that comment about like, oh, the Beatles are bigger than, you know, Jesus to the young people, and I really don't think he meant it in a disrespectful way, and people took it, you know. I mean, but he was right at that point. I mean, they were. It was huge. Beatles. I mean, what they did for music, not just like I said, the album. You know, putting together. People who put together, you know, albums later on. Like no one. They just threw a bunch of songs and called it an album. They purposely put songs together to make an album. You know, the Rolling Stones, who are on this list, who I actually like better than the Beatles, didn't put albums. Oh no, I just ruined it again. I'm sorry, my bad. But they didn't put together albums in that way. They put a bunch of good songs together, but not like a cohesive album. Yeah. Beatles, they, you know, they epitomized it. They were the top.
I agree. So #1 on our list is going to be Michael Jackson, Thriller.
You just said that without a thrill at all.
Michael Jackson.
But here's the thing. Everything that we've talked about tonight, all the criteria that went into our list tonight, this album fits everything. MTV, huge. Album sales, huge. Iconic to our generation, huge. The few of my personal thoughts on this is, you know, my dad had this album, and you know, for a 40-year-old Caucasian male living outside of Chicago to have this album and you know rock it was iconic, and he did that. A few other things, you know, some of the other, you know, the Thrillers and the Beat It and all that stuff is on there, but one of my favorite stories about this album is PYT, because I played that song and my mom was like, "What's PYT? What does that mean? What does that stand for?" Like it was some kind of like, you know, iconic code or something that was just gonna come out there, and you know, we were all secret society or something like that. She was so upset about it. It was like, PYT, what is this? And you know, to me, that's just when you have a personal thought that goes along with everything we just mentioned, the MTV, the record sales, all that. I think to me, it's just, you can't argue any.
I thought you can, Dave.
You can't. You cannot. It's
no, but I agree. This one is really a hard. I mean, all the other ones you can sit there and I mean, like I said, we probably had 30, 40 albums that were in this discussion, and a lot of them deserve to be somewhere in here. Very hard to narrow down top 10 of, you know, for that long. But I mean, Thriller, the impact it had, and one of the big things is it crossed the race barrier that I didn't realize. I watched saying how MTV just really, you know, it brought just where it opened up Lionel Richie, Prince, and then once that opened, it was just more, MTV was more open to just all artists.
Nobody cared.
It was more just because MTV kind of started as more new wave, and it was just that type of, and it kind of just, and I mean the record sales, the hits. Everybody had it. Everybody knew it.
The
videos. Hey, I know my story with that is I made my parents switch from HBO to Showtime because Showtime was showing the making of Michael Jackson Thriller. And I made them switch so I could watch the making of Michael Jackson Thriller. It had impacts beyond the album, just society, culture. I mean, it's still a good song. I mean, Billie Jean, still my favorite. Not even mentioned.
And not
like
to mention, I'm the album cover guy tonight. So was he not laying with a tiger on this album? Was that this
You
one?
had to open it up, yeah.
So to me, if you're laying with a
It was
freaking
a baby
tiger,
tiger. It was a baby tiger.
if you have a tiger next to you, I mean, come on.
It was sedated.
You don't know that. He might have sedated it in ways you don't want to know about.
Oh,
I won't go there.
Oh, okay.
So we're talking about the iconic nature of the album and stuff, but I really think it brought pop and dance into a video now, right? The whole dance with Thriller was, everybody knows that dance.
It was a production.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was the video was a movie,
Yes.
right? It was 13 minutes or something, whatever it was. It wasn't that 2-3 minute video you saw on MTV. It was a movie.
And the special effects that later come out of some of a lot of people don't know this. The special effects that were used in that video were later used in Terminator movies. So I mean, I'm a huge Terminator
Paul
fan.
McCartney's. I mean, he was a big Beatles fan, which kind of goes back to. I mean, he really his. You can say whatever you want about Michael Jackson, but he cared about the art of what he was doing, and he perfected it. And he took it to a whole new level, and he took MTV to a whole new level.
He cared about a lot of other things too that we won't discuss because later in his career it got a little weird. But
so the tracks on this album, we won't go. He released 7 of them, but I feel like I know all these songs anyway.
Because you had the album and you listened to it.
Well, obviously, but
Yeah.
Wanna Be Starting Something, Baby Be Mine, The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney, Thriller, Beat It, Billie Jean, Human Nature, PYT, and The Lady My Wife. And PYT was also written by James Ingram.
Right. So you're thinking maybe 2 of those aren't household name songs, maybe?
Well, that's what it's saying, because it's only 9 songs on the album, honestly.
Right.
But I feel like I could probably sing every word of every song. That's
if you put it on, you would sit
please
there
do
and hum
that.
along, you would know the
You
song.
please sing every go right now.
And the bottom.
Billie Jean.
No. But yeah, I mean but we talk about albums. That's literally one of the very few albums, top to bottom, that I can honestly say I know every song.
And just the impact that album had. It took music, it took the 80s to a whole new level.
It changed the generation.
I mean, the Beatles did that too, but this one just took, because I think, again, the video impact of what it did to MTV also was huge. And where some of these albums, I know it's albums, but I think, you look at the 80s, you can't deny the video impact. I mean, we, sometimes we didn't know what these artists looked like as much, besides an album cover. We knew in the 80s what...
Well, you can't say that about Michael Jackson in that video.
Well, he looked different every time. The next video, he looked completely different because he had no surgery. But that's... Well, at least we can see the progression. We can track it.
We can track it. Big bomb.
Well, thank you guys for watching our video. We're gonna, bring more to you. Please subscribe. Please make comments, make suggestions. We're open to all that.
Tell us your top 10 album. Tell us what we should have put on here, you think. Tell us what you agree with. Whatever,
Check out our Instagram. I believe on Instagram we're going to be posting songs that were honorable mentions that didn't make our list, but I'm sure some of you would think should have been on our list. So definitely check that out.